There once was a little boy who had a very bad temper. His father decided to hand him a bag of nails and said that every time the boy lost his temper, he had to hammer a nail into the fence. On the first day, the boy hammered 37 nails into that fence. The boy gradually began to control his temper over the next few weeks, and the number of nails he was hammering into the fence slowly decreased. He discovered it was easier to control his temper than to hammer those nails into the fence. Finally, the day came when the boy didn't lose his temper at all. He told his father the news, and the father suggested that the boy should now pull out a nail every day he kept his temper under control. The days passed and the young boy was finally able to tell his father that all the nails were gone. The father took his son by the hand and led him to the fence. "You have done well, my son, but look at the holes in the fence. The fence will never be the same. When you say things in anger, they leave a scar just like this one. You can put a knife in a man and draw it out. It won't matter how many times you say I'm sorry, the wound is still there." People visit a wise man complaining about the same problems over and over again. One day, he decided to tell them a joke and they all roared with laughter. After a few minutes, he told them the same joke and only a few of them smiled. Then he told the same joke for a third time, but no one laughed or smiled anymore. The wise man smiled and said, "You can't laugh at the same joke over and over. So why are you always crying about the same problem?" A shop owner placed a sign above his door that said, "Puppies for sale." Signs like this always have a way of attracting young children, and to no surprise, a boy saw the sign and approached the owner. "How much are you going to sell the puppies for?" he asked. The store owner replied, "Anywhere from $30 to $50. The little boy pulled out some change from his pocket. "I have $2.37, he said. "Can I please look at them?" The shop owner smiled and whistled. Out of the kennel came Lady, who ran down the aisle of his shop followed by 5 tiny balls of fur. One puppy was lagging considerably behind. Immediately the little boy singled out the lagging, limping puppy and said, "What's wrong with that little dog?" The shop owner explained that the veterinarian had examined the little puppy and had discovered it didn't have a hip socket. It would always limp. It would always be lame. The little boy became excited. "That is the puppy that I want to buy." The shop owner said, "No, you don't want to buy that little dog. If you really want him, I'll just give him to you." The little boy got quite upset. He looked straight into the store owner's eyes, pointing his finger, and said, "I don't want you to give him to me. That little dog is worth every bit as much as all the other dogs and I'll pay full price. In fact, I'll give you $2.37 now, and 50 cents a month until I have him paid for." The shop owner countered, "You really don't want to buy this little dog. He is never going to be able to run and jump and play with you like the other puppies." To his surprise, the little boy reached down and rolled up his pant leg to reveal a badly twisted, crippled left leg supported by a big metal brace. He looked up at the shop owner and softly replied, "Well, I don't run so well myself, and the little puppy will need someone who understands." As a man was passing the elephants, he suddenly stopped, confused by the fact that these huge creatures were being held by only a small rope tied to their front leg. No chains, no cages. It was obvious that the elephants could, at any time, break away from their bonds, but for some reason, they did not. He saw a trainer nearby and asked why these animals just stood there and made no attempt to get away. "Well," trainer said, "when they are very young and much smaller we use the same size rope to tie them and, at that age, it's enough to hold them. As they grow up, they are conditioned to believe they cannot break away. They believe the rope can still hold them, so they never try to break free." The man was amazed. These animals could at any time break free from their bonds, but because they believed they couldn't, they were stuck right where they were.
Once upon a time, a man found a beautiful butterfly that was starting to hatch from its cocoon. He sat down and watched the butterfly for hours as it struggled to force itself through a teeny hole. Then it suddenly stopped making progress and looking like it was stuck. Therefore, the man decided to help the butterfly out. He took a pair of scissors and cut off the remaining bit of the cocoon. The butterfly then emerged easily, although it had a swollen body and small, shriveled wings. The man thought nothing of it, and he sat there waiting for the wings to enlarge to support the butterfly. However, that never happened. The butterfly spent the rest of its life unable to fly, crawling around with small wings and a swollen body. Despite the man's kind heart, he did not understand that the restricting cocoon and the struggle needed by the butterfly to get itself through the small hole, were God's way of forcing fluid from the body of the butterfly into its wings to prepare itself for flying once it was free. Once upon a time, a daughter complained to her father that her life was miserable and that did not know how she was going to make it. She was tired of fighting and struggling all the time. It seemed just as one problem was solved, another one soon followed. Her father, a chef, took her to the kitchen. He filled 3 pots with water and placed each on a high fire. Once the 3 pots began to boil, he placed potatoes in one pot, eggs in the second pot, and ground coffee beans in the third pot. They let He then let them sit and boil without saying a word to his daughter. The daughter moaned and impatiently waited, wondering was what he was doing. After 20 minutes, he turned off the burners. He took the potatoes out of the pot and placed them in a bowl. He pulled the boiled egg out and placed them in a bowl. He then ladled the coffee out of and placed it in a cup. Turning to her, he asked, "Daughter, what do you see?" "Potatoes, eggs, and coffee," she hastily replied. "Look closer," he said, "and touch the potatoes." She did not, and noted that they were soft. He then asked her to take an egg and break it. After pulling off the shell, she observed the hard boiled egg. Finally, he asked her to sip the coffee. Its rich aroma brought a smile to her face. "Father, what does this mean?" she asked. He then explained that the potatoes, the eggs and coffee beans and each faced the same adversity sorry advertise adversity, the boiling water. However, each one reached differently. The potato went in strong, hard, and unrelenting, but in boiling water it became soft and weak. The egg was fragile with the thin outer shell protecting its liquid interior until it was put in the boiling water. Then the inside of the egg became hard. However, the ground coffee beans were unique. After they were exposed to the boiling water, they changed the water and created something new. One afternoon, a fox was walking through the forest and spotted a bunch of grapes hanging from a lofty branch. Just the thing to quench my first thirst, he thought, taking a couple of steps back. The fox jumped and just missed the hanging grapes. The fox tried again but still failed to reach them. Finally, giving up, the fox turned his nose up and says they were probably sore anyway and walked away. In the days when an ice cream sundae cost much less, a 10 years old boy entered a hotel coffee shop and sat at a table. A waitress put a glass of water in front of him. How much is an ice cream sundae? 50 cents, replied the waitress. The little boy pulled his hand out of his pocket and studied a number of coins in it. How much is a dish of plain ice cream? He inquired. Some people were not waiting for a table, and waitress was a bit impatient. 35 cents, she said briskly. The little boy again counted the coin. I will have the plain ice cream, he said. The waitress bought the ice cream, put the bill on the table, and walked away. The boy finished the ice cream, paid the cashier, and departed. When the waitress came back, she began wiping down the table, and they swallowed hard at what she said. They are placed neatly beside the empty dish where 50 cents and her tip. A group of frogs were traveling through the forest when two of them fell into a deep pit. When the other dogs saw how deep the pit was, they told the two frogs that there was no hope left from them. However, the two frogs ignored their comrades and proceeded to try to jump out of the pit. However, despite their efforts, the group of frogs at the top of the pit were still saying that they should just give up as they had never make it out. Eventually, one of the frogs took heed of what the others were saying and he gave up, jumping even deeper to his death. The other frog continued to jump as hard as they could. Once again, the group of frogs yelled at him to stop the pain and to just die. He ignored them and jumped even harder and finally made it out. When he got out, the other frog said, did you not hear us? The frog explained to them that he was deaf and that he thought they were encouraging him the entire time. A popular speaker started off a seminar by holding up a $20 bill. A crowd of 200 had gathered to hear him speak. He asked who would like this $20 bill. 200 hands went up. He said, I am going to give this $20 to one of you, but first let me do this. He crumpled the bill up. He then asked who still wants it. All 200 hands were still raised. Well, he replied, what if I do this? Then he dropped the bill on the ground and stomped on it with his shoes. He picked it up and showed it to the crowd. The bill was all crumpled and dirty. Now who still wants it? All the hands still went up. My fathers, I have just showed you a very important lesson. No matter what I did do the money, you still wanted it because it did not decrease in value. It was still worth $20. Many times in our lives, life crumples us and grinds us into the dirt. We make bad decisions or deal with a poor circumstance. We feel worthless, but no matter what has happened or what will happen, you will never lose your value. You are special. Don't ever forget it. A 24-year-old boy seeing out from the train's window shouted, Dad, look, the trees are going behind. Dad smiled, and a young couple sitting nearby looked at the 24-year-old childish behavior with pity. Suddenly he again explained, Dad, look, the clouds are running with us. The couple could not resist and said to the old man, Why don't you take your son to a good doctor? The old man smiled and said, I did, and we are just coming from the hospital. My son was blind from birth. He just got his eyes today. Every single person on the planet has a story. Don't judge people before you truly know them. The truth might surprise you. In a small Italian town, hundreds of years ago, a small business owner owed a large sum of money to a loan shark. The loan shark was very old, unattractive looking guy that just so happened to fancy the business owner's daughter. He decided to offer the businessman a deal that would completely wipe out the debt he owed him. However, the catch was that we would only wipe out the debt it if he could marry the businessman's daughter. Needless to say, this proposal was met with a look of disgust. The loan shark said that he would place two pebbles into a bag, one white and one black. The daughter would then have to reach into the bag and pick out a pebble. If it was black, the debt was the debt The death would be wiped, but the loan shark would marry her if it was while the death would also be wiped, but the daughter would not have to marry the loan shark. Standing on a pebble strewn path in the businessman's garden, the loan shark bent over the picked up two pebbles. Whilst he was picking them and up, the daughter noticed that he did picked up two black pebbles and placed them both into the bag. He then asked the daughter to reach into the bag and pick a one. The daughter naturally had three choices as to what she could have done. First, refuse to pick a pebble from the bag. Second, take both pebbles out of the bag and expose the loan shark of cheating. Third, pick a pebble from the bag fully well knowing it was black and sacrifice herself for her father's freedom. She drew out a pebble from the bag and before looking at it accidentally dropped it into the midst of the other pebbles. She said to the lone star, "Oh, how clumsy of me! Never mind. If you look into the bag for the one that is left, you will be able to tell which pebble I picked. The pebble left in the bag is obviously black, and seeing as the lone shark did not want to be exposed, he had to play along as if the pebble the daughter dropped was white and cleared her father's death. After spending nearly every waking minute with Angel for 8 straight days, I knew that I had to tell her just one thing. So late at night, just before she fell asleep, I whispered it in her ear. She smiled, the kind of smile that makes me smile back, and she said, "When I am 75 and I think about my life and what it was like to be young, I hope that I can remember this every moment." A few seconds later, they closed her eyes and fell asleep. The room was peaceful, almost silent. All I could hear was the soft purr of her beating. I stayed awake thinking about the time we did spend together and all the choices in our lives that made this moment possible. And at the same point, I realized that it did not matter what we did done or where we did done gone, nor did the future hold any significance. All that mattered was the serenity of the moment, just being with her and beating her with her. An old man lives in the village. The whole village was tired of him. He was always gloomy. He constantly complained and was always in a bad mood. The longer he lived, the viler he became and more poisonous were his words. People did their best to avoid him because his misfortune was contagious. He created the feeling of unhappiness in others. But one day, when he turned 80, an incredible thing happened. Instantly, everyone started hearing the rumor. The old man is happy today. He does not complain about anything. He smiles, and even his face is freshened up. The whole village gathered around the man and asked him, "What happened to you?" The old man replied, "Nothing special. 80 years I have been chasing happiness and it was all useless. And then I decided to live without happiness and just enjoy life. That's why I am happy now."